What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, go ahead and pause this video, go pack a bowl, smoke it, and then come back, because we all know that coding is way more fun when you're stoned. On today's episode, we're going to be making a carousel or a slider. It can be used for showing images or items in a store, whatever you want to use it for. We've all seen it before. As you can see, I've already imported my style sheet. I'm not going to go too much into the styling. Again, this is about functionality, not styling. If you want to use the styling from this project, you can go to the link in the description and see the source code on GitHub and get everything from there. Go ahead and start by importing React and the use effect and use state hooks that we'll be using in the project for controlling animation and state. And we'll go ahead and import the style sheet as well. Next, we'll go ahead and define the functional component for React called Carousel. And we'll need a few props to be passed to this in order for it to work. One will be content, which will be an array of elements or components. The next one will be items per slide, which will be the count of the items per slide, obviously, the title. And then the maximum width and max height will be the actual maximum width and height of the items inside of the carousel, so we can contain things like photos and stuff like that. And the style is just used for passing on styles from the parent component, so you can actually customize the component to match your layout. Next, we'll go ahead and define the state variables that we'll be using. One will be start index, which will track the index of the slides that we're actually displaying on the screen. The next one will be animation state variable, which will track the animations as we apply them and remove them from the class names to apply the animation. And if you're not familiar with React and states, basically all states is a way to track a variable as the component is being re-rendered. So every time the view is updated, you can still track what was on the previous render. The next thing we'll be doing is calculating the end index of the current slide, and we'll use the math object for that and use the min function, and we'll pass the two arguments to it, and we'll figure out which one is lower, and that will be the end index of the current slide. And then it'll help prevent us from running over the array and trying to show things that aren't there and then throwing an error. And now we'll take the next thing we'll do is we'll create a use effect, and this will be used to track the animation. So we'll set the animation as the dependent, and then we'll do a check right here, and if there is an animation set, then we'll go ahead and create a timeout to reset it after half a second. And the way this is working is we'll actually set animations to this state variable, and it'll be class names. So as these class names are changing and being removed, the animations will be removed as well. So you'll see an animation play, and that's the animation you see when you click the right or the previous or next buttons. And as soon as you click the button, the animation pretty much gets removed from the class name, and the animation is not replayed. And then we'll clear the function to prevent memory leaks. So when this component is unmounted, this timeout will be removed from memory. Whenever you use the use effect hook, it's really good practice to use a cleanup function just to prevent memory leaks and using unnecessary resources or trying to make calls after the component has been unmounted. Next thing we'll do is handle the function for clicking the next button, which will slide to the next items in the array. And the way we do that is we take the end index, and if it's equal to or greater than the length of the array, then we'll start back at 0. If it's not, then the new starting index will be the previous end index of the previous slide. And then we'll also assign the animation by updating the animation state variable with the class name so that the style is applied. And now we'll do the same thing for the previous slide button that we click. And the way we do that is we'll have to move backwards in the array, and how we do that is we'll take the start index and we'll check and see if it's 0. If it is, then we'll have to go all the way back to the end of the array. We'll have to use the remainder operator to figure out how many items to actually display, so that, like, once again, we don't loop over and extend the length of the array. And if it's not 0, then we'll just add the start index to the items per slide, or start index minus the items per slide, and that will give us the previous slide that we had just looked at. And then we'll also apply the animation again to this one. Alright, hold on, I have to update this. It's got to be slide left and slide right respectively, of course. That way the animation is displayed right when the class is applied to the element. And you can see these class names right here, slide left, slide right, and then it plays the animations that we've defined down here using the keyframes. The next thing we'll do is write the return function, the return that will actually return the component with all the content passed on to it from the parent. And we'll start off with the container, and we'll also pass on the style prop that we pass to it so that we can actually customize this component to match the layout of our actual project. And then we'll use the title, and we'll check and see if there is a title. If not, then we won't display anything. If there is, then we'll display it up above on top like you saw on the slide. The next thing we'll do is create a button, and the button will give a class name, 2 class names. One will be carousel button, and the next one will be left. And you can change these, of course, however you want, but it's just the carousel button is a standardized class which will pass the look that you saw on the slider, and the left is just kind of positions it absolutely on the component. And we'll give it an on click of previous slide, so that when we click it, the previous slide function is fired. Next, we will create the wrapper for the actual content inside of the carousel, and we'll also apply the animation class to it. We'll pass on the animation variable so that as we apply styles to it, and as the animation state variable is updated, it will apply and remove the animation classes that we have in our CSS. And now what we'll do is we'll take the content array and we will slice it, and this will grab the elements that are between the start index and the end index using the numbers, the indexes that we calculated up above, and then we'll take those items and we will map them, or loop through each one of them, iterate through them, and we will render each one conditionally. And the way that we do this is we use a function of the React library, or the React object called clone component. And what this will do is take each item out of the array and we'll clone it, and as we're cloning it, we can modify it, and we can add props to it, remove props to it, and in our case we will style it. We'll update the styling and we'll add the max width and the max height to the element. That way we can apply the max width and max height that we provided from the parent element. And if you're going to be passing custom components to it, then I would recommend just creating the array using the components and the props that you want, and then not using this clone component or clone element function that's provided by React, because it can cause problems. If you want to know what kind of problems, you can look at the documentation at react.dev. But for our case, it works fine. So the next thing we'll do is we'll create our last button, which will be the next slide button, and just like the other one, we'll give it the class names, carousel button and right, and then we'll pass it on, click of next slide, so it's fired when that button is clicked. And we'll go ahead and export it right here. That way we can import it into our app.js and use it in our project. Oops, wrong spot. Got to put it outside of the function, otherwise it'll just throw an error. And that should be it for the carousel.js file. That's CSS style sheet. Everything looks like it's right. Well, I guess we'll see. This is what it's supposed to look like, by the way. I haven't shown it in a while. And now we'll go to our app.js and we'll import it into our file. That way we can load it up. And I'll just copy the same image folder or image elements that you saw in the other project here. And then we'll go ahead and import the file. And we'll go ahead and write the code for the carousel component. First thing we'll do is we'll give it a style. That way we can give it a set height. We'll give it a set height of 350 pixels. And also next thing we'll do is we'll pass on the content prop, and we'll pass the my components variable that we created, the array of images that you'll see displayed on the carousel. And we give it an items per slide of 4, and it'll show only 4 of those at a time. A title of, how about, that'll work. A few cannabis plants. That's proof that there's God right there, if ever there was. And we give it a max width of 200 pixels and a max height of 200 pixels. And that'll contain the images to a maximum of 200 high or 200 wide, depending on the resolution of the photos. Yeah. And that should be it. We go look at it, it should load up. Oh, let me refresh it here. No, that is not right. I messed up somewhere. Let's go check it out. That's part of it. I mean, the functionality works, but that's part of this. You can spend a lot of time debugging, not so much time writing code. It's probably like 30% writing code and about 70% of debugging and trying to figure out what it is that is wrong. Like why, what's going on. So click around, look at the code. Let's see what's going on. See if we can figure it out. And it looks like I have a typo in my container class, and it should work now. Let's see what happens. And there you have it. A carousel that looks pretty and has weed plants in it, so it's even prettier. That's it for today. If you got anything out of it, then go ahead and like, subscribe, and that way you can get updates as I create new content, and you can learn React with me. Hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day, and until next time, deuces.